What do you see in 10 years? Do you ever like extrapolate and think what most of us are going to be doing? As a biohacker, what is how optimistic are you, and what are we looking at?
I'm obviously biased because I'm me, but I like my approach. Because if you look at the biohacking world, a lot of the technologies that we have, like if you look at PEMF mats, grounding, earthing, all these electrical modalities that are supposed to reduce inflammation, that's like the indoor technology variant of going outside barefoot, going for a walk on the beach, nasal breathing, doing some breath work, doing some yoga, going outside in a walk with some deep breathing, like doing that as much as possible. I think so you don't become jaded and spend your entire life indoors and pale is a good idea. Do the natural thing as much as possible. It could be considered off limits.
Guys, welcome to the Off Limits podcast here. My next guest is Ben Greenfield. And I had an amazing chat with this guy. I'd seen him selling things, and I'm always weary of people like that, but he's got a great sense of humor, and he really knows his stuff. And more importantly, as you'll hear, the guy changes his mind when he's wrong. And he's one of those authentic voices in the health and wellness space, which is actually pretty rare. I count like Andy Galpin and Lane Norton, but there are not a lot of them. And Ben Greenfield's definitely one of them. Little housekeeping, my special False Gods on YouTube just dropped. I'm very proud of it. Take a look. From what I hear, I don't read this stuff. It's getting great reviews. Not that I ever read any of that stuff. And also, I'm going to be in Vancouver at the Westminster House of Comedy. It's kind of in Vancouver, outside of Vancouver. The House of Comedy. I'm excited. Come see me. Come check it out. I hope you get a lot out of this. We cover a lot of stuff, man, a lot of health stuff. And some of it's dense. But, when you talk to a guy who's really done the research and used his own body as a guinea pig, you're going to get long, deep, well thought out answers. And by the way, he was doing the podcast on a treadmill the entire time, getting his 20,000 steps in somewhere in the middle of Idaho in his biohacked house with his amazing family. This is a dude, Ben Greenfield's one of those guys who probably gives seminars on how to basically etch out the life you want to the nth degree. He's just deliberate about everything. One of those really disciplined dudes. And I was very impressed. So I hope you enjoy the podcast today. Ben Greenfield, you and I have been chatting.
Yeah.
While we tried to get this.
I mean, I already have to pee, and we just started recording.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I have that effect, dude. It's the alpha effect. I'm a soma or whatever they call these, or a sigma. Is that the new thing? Mm-hmm. You've been like in Idaho and you've had this huge impact. That's what I find so impressive. I mean, you kind of use your body as a guinea pig. I would just see you usually just being shredded and talking about some supplement you were taking.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always find it's never a surprise to me when somebody's been successful for a long time that they're essentially a complete human being, sense of humor. They get it. Usually the answers are pretty nuanced.
Yeah.
But having said all that, as a biohacker, we were talking about, like, you used to be an endurance athlete. I'm watching like David Goggins do the Moab. And I'm friends with Cameron Hayes, who's my age, and he does things like the Moab. I just have to believe that in some ways your body will ultimately pay a price. It's almost like you have a battery in your body, and you're just, I don't know how many long-lived, ultra endurance athletes are out there. I may be wrong, but
look, they're out there. Like, you can find the 90-year-old marathoner, and they always look pretty shitty compared to the 90-year-old track and field athlete, but they're out there. And I don't know if I believe the whole like body is a battery. You have X number of heartbeats in your ticker and then game over spiel. Right. But you could make a pretty strong case that there is like a Goldilocks zone to exercise, like a law of diminishing returns with exercise. And remember, like you mentioned, this is coming from a guy who did like 20 years of Ironman and Spartan racing and adventure racing and open water swimming. And like, I was telling my kids on a drive home, we passed a cyclist on the road, and I'm like, you guys realize like that used to be my life on the weekends. It was like 4 to 6 hour ride on a Saturday, get back, run 10 miles in the pool on Sunday morning, recovery ride on Sunday afternoon. And if you actually look at the mechanism, like at the data of endurance training, yeah, it's kind of obvious what you see in a guy like Goggins. You know, Goggins has knee issues. You know, Cam has foot issues. They're great. They're inspirational guys. Like, they're really helping people climb their own personal Mount Everest and go out and do incredible things. But it takes a toll biomechanically on the joints. And I don't think anybody would be surprised by that. But what a lot of people are surprised by is they would think that, well, that means you at least have really strong heart and lungs. And that's where the research shows that once you pass a certain point, and it's kind of a shockingly low point, you get higher risk of atherosclerosis, higher risk of like calcium deposition in the arteries, and higher risk of cardiovascular disease once you exceed a certain allotment. And it's about 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise. And that doesn't mean like going for a walk or like gardening. That would be kind of like frowny face on the treadmill, you know, sucking wind a little bit, not going all out, but definitely feeling the burn. Like, once you get past 150 minutes of that a week, or once you get past 75 minutes of super high intensity a week, which again doesn't sound like much, but I mean, you know this because you do some exercising, Brian, like you mentioned you did an EMOM. Like, high intensity exercise, the way it's defined by those parameters, is like super hard. Like, 95% of people don't even get to that point in the gym. But the average like CrossFitter, super serious athlete, gym junkie, they get there. And once you exceed 75 minutes of that, or 150 minutes of the moderate intensity stuff, you don't see more returns. And paradoxically, you actually see earlier onset of arterial stiffening. And some doctors get pissed at me when I say stuff like this, because they're like, you shouldn't be telling people not to exercise, bro. Like, this is dangerous advice. People just need to.
You're not saying that. You're saying extreme exercise probably puts a tax on your body, when part of your body is your arterial branch, your heart. And it makes sense, right? I mean, it just makes sense when you're not sleeping and running 240 miles. I can't imagine that that's going to be good for your body in general. You're putting yourself in extreme stress.
The other thing is, like, you'll get like the ancestral people. Some of them will say, well, dude, like, we were wired up to hunt and gather and like be out in the wilderness all day long. So how could you tell me that running 240 miles in a week couldn't be healthy or ancestral? For anybody who's been hunting, like, you're not like jogging through the forest with your backpack on. You're walking, you're lunging, you're bear crawling, you're bending, you're carrying heavy load for short distances, stopping and recovering. And so I'm not talking about like that more ancestral stuff, or even like what I'm doing, right? I take like 20,000 steps a day on this treadmill. I don't consider any of that to be like the damaging form of exercise. But if you step back and look at it, the way I see it is pretty simple. Like, yes, move a lot. Like, doctors are encouraging people to do more and more, but not at a super intense pace, more like a walking pace.
So, do you know how, I don't know if you know this, but boxers, so the old school boxers like Ali and in all the old school boxing camps, they would do something really interesting. The way they built endurance, because when you box, like, you cannot, if you got a 12, 15 round fight like they used to, obviously your gas tank has got to be there. You cannot run. And that's why they were always doing road work. But if you watch them, they actually weren't running fast. What they would do is they would say, okay, you got to keep your heart rate at 120 for an hour and a half, or run for an hour. Now, you run for an hour at 120 beats per second. But here's the thing. As you keep doing that and you keep your heart rate at 120, you go further and further, because your body doesn't need to pump as hard for that.
You build efficiency. There's a whole story behind how that form of training came to be. To close that loop real quick, basically, you walk a lot, you lift heavy shit, and you sprint every once in a while. Like that's the way that I look at things now. But that whole idea of like going at a slow pace and gradually building massive amounts of cardiovascular efficiency over time, done at a low enough pace to where you're not stressing the heart and stressing the joints a lot less, is based on this. It's an exercise physiology tactic that was originally designed by this guy named Phil Maffetone, who used to work with a bunch of the top Ironman. Like, I don't know if you used to watch Hawaii Ironman on TV, but there were the guys way back in the day who were, on steel bikes and Speedos, and it was like Dave Scott, and Mark Allen, and these guys, especially Mark Allen, he's the guy who popularized this notion.
Yeah, Mark Allen was the guy who was like in his 30s, but looked like he was 80 because his face had those lines. And
and now he looks like the grandma from Something About Mary. I love Mark and Dave and all these guys, but that amount of time in the sun, no matter how slow you're running, it doesn't do you any favors. So, so the idea was he would go out for his runs. He had to breathe through his nose. He had to do things like walk up hills if his heart rate got above a certain rate. But gradually he got faster and faster and more efficient at that so-called, what we would call popularly in exercise now, the zone 2 pace. And it works really well to build endurance without beating up the body. And it's maybe a little bit harder than the pace I'm going while I'm walking right now. But it's it's almost like a grandma jog. Wow. And it's surprising if you do that consistently, how much cardiovascular efficiency you can build up without stressing the body. The one mistake people make is they also hear that that's the fat burning zone. And this is the problem, is people hear, well, you burn more fat at a lower intensity, and then you get the people trying to lose weight walking for 2 hours on the treadmill at the gym. The problem is, yes, I should explain. I don't know how deep a dive into science your listeners like to take, but
I like it because there's so much pro science, and what matters to me is, what do the human controlled studies say? Everybody's got opinions.
So let's take a couple minutes to explain. But my formal background, my master's degree is in exercise physiology. So when I got out of college, for 5 years, I ran a sports performance laboratory, and one of the tests that we did was you would wear this giant mask and you'd breathe in and out of a tube, and you'd lay on the ground and you test your resting metabolic rate with that mask. It's called indirect calorimetry. So you're estimating how many calories, how much fat, and how many carbs you're burning by measuring the carbon dioxide inhaled and the oxygen, or the carbon dioxide exhaled and the oxygen inhaled. And then you do that same thing while walking and then running and going at gradually higher paces until you've kind of got your fat carb burn figured out at a variety of different intensities. So it turns out that at the lower intensities, you burn more fat. But the problem is that people hear that, they think best way for me to lose weight is just going to be to walk at a low intensity for a long period of time. But you are burning more fat and appreciably fewer calories. So if I burn like 80% fat, but I'm burning 200 calories an hour, I'm technically going to burn calories and lose weight faster if I'm burning 40% fat, but I'm burning like 800 calories per hour. And that's why high intensity interval training, EMOMs, intense bursts of cardio actually work better for fat loss, because you're getting this sharp increase in metabolic rate. You're not getting the muscle wasting that comes with long, slow bouts of cardio. And then you have what's called an increased oxygen demand after exercise. And so all that stuff boosts the metabolic rate. So when it comes to fat loss, it's like, yeah, zone 2 burns more fat. But if your number one goal is just like losing weight, high intensity interval training works better for that.
This episode is sponsored by Aura. Guys, you ever wonder how scammers get your phone number, or why your inbox is flooded with all kinds of spam? Well, there are companies out there called data brokers, and they sell your data against without your consent. You don't know it. They sell it to the highest bidder. They sell it to marketers. They sell it even to stalkers. And while they're legally required to remove your info if you ask, they make the process very confusing, very convoluted, all right? But guess what? Aura is a company that takes care of all the hard part by automatically removing your info from all of these sites, and they keep it off, all right? So it is, and I have a number of friends that have used this stuff. It is an excellent company. If you look at their reviews, they are crushing it. It's an all-in-one digital security company. You may already have a digital security tool, but not having Aura is like locking the front door but leaving the back door open, okay? You get alerts if your personal info is found on the dark web. You get real-time fraud alerts for credit and banking, 24/7 monitoring to help keep your identity secure, a secure VPN, antivirus, password manager, and more. US-based support available around the clock if something goes wrong. My whole family, I'm getting my whole family on this, okay? Because if anything does happen, Aura includes $5 million in identity theft insurance protection. How about that? One app, every layer of protection. That's why this podcast chooses Aura. Try Aura free 14 days at aura.com/Bryan Callen. Aura.com/Bryan Callen. In those 2 weeks, you'll discover where your data is being exposed and sold. All right. So I'm getting everybody I know on Aura in my immediate circle because it's just too important not to do. Thank you. Aura.com/Bryan Callen. Yeah, man. For me, it's just about like what I can do to keep my energy going. And I think you got to sleep. A lot of this is pretty simple, but I do think that a good hour of exercise, doing what you like. I like to do a little jiu-jitsu, a little boxing, with guys who are like a little older and pros who aren't going to beat the shit out of me. But, so you just get a thing going, there's something great about wrestling, great about jiu-jitsu because it's so complete. And
I think with the energy piece, like, obviously now it's kind of fun because I spend a lot of time with the supplements industry and in the nutrition space. So there are a lot of cool things now that go beyond just like caffeine and nicotine that you can use to keep the lights on in your brain. And some of them aren't even like central nervous system stimulants. Like you've probably seen the new research on creatine, especially in a sleep deprived state, like just old school plain Jane creatine monohydrate. If you get 10 plus grams of that and up to 20 grams, and you are cognitively at a higher demand, you're sleep deprived, you have some amount of neural inflammation because you've been traveling, whatever, that actually has a significant effect on cognition with no like caffeine, smart drugs, nootropics, mushroom microdosing, whatever. So creatine is one. Then the other one that's like the non-central nervous system stimulant, and I'm actually wearing a patch of it right now because they make them in patches. You used to have to get like IVs or take a little bit orally, is NAD. I don't know if you've messed around with that.
I was going to ask you about NAD. I wanted to know about that. Yeah, NAD.
Yeah, that's like I still want to sleep tonight and I don't want to take in a bunch of caffeine or smart drugs. Nootropic hack is creatine and NAD. So it's a big standby for me when I travel.
So do you take NAD every day? You have a patch on all the time?
So what I do is I take NAD orally every day.
Yeah.
I wear a patch once a week. And then if I'm in a city, because we've established, I don't even know if we established the fact before or after the show that I live out in the middle of nowhere. But if I'm in a place like LA or Austin or whatever, and I can get one of those NAD IVs, like if I can drop into a Next Health or some medical clinic, like the NAD IVs are a really good way to get into the system, but the patches have gotten so good, you leave them on for like 12 hours. They'll do 1,200 milligrams of NAD, which would be like a 4-hour IV sit.
And you feel good. You feel a difference with those?
Oh yeah.
Hey, is there measurable scientific data that we can point to with NAD?
Not on NAD and the sleep deprivation piece. There is on the creatine piece and sleep deprivation.
For sure, creatine.
So the theorized mechanism of action, even though NAD does have some good data on it for decreasing the rate at which telomeres shorten, assisting with longevity, et cetera, it's almost like a DNA repair compound, is that when you sleep, a lot of stuff happens, but two things happen related to energy. One, your body refills its ATP stores, the body's energy currency. And two, you have DNA repair. If you look at creatine, what it's doing is it's giving your body bioavailable phosphate molecules like creatine phosphate that you're not getting because you didn't replenish enough ATP while you were asleep. And then the theory for the NAD is that because you didn't repair DNA as well, because you weren't sleeping as long or as well, NAD is patching up those holes. So you put those two together, and again, there's other stuff that you can take. Oh, whatever.
Yeah, I'll take like
Alpha Brain and Qualia and,
yeah.
the Paul Stamets mushroom stag. Like there's so many things.
Have you ever tried Magic Mind? I do Magic Mind Max, which is a time release program.
Yeah, that's a little shot.
Yeah, and I actually really like it. It actually it makes a difference because it's a nootropic. It's got ashwagandha. It's got these different mushroom compounds, adaptogens, and
I'll tell you. You mentioned that I guinea pig a lot of stuff, and I do. Like I've done everything, the blood filtrations and all the different stem cells and the gene therapies, and so I also test a lot of supplements. There are a lot of done for you formulas out there. Magic Mind would be one of them, and then there's a lot of kind of like lesser known companies that have weird formulations where they've tried to simulate what like the Navy SEAL wakefulness drug modafinil would do. Right. But instead of keeping you awake for 24 hours, it would just last like 12 hours.
Wow.
And then there's other combinations of compounds that work really well. And I would say a few that fly under the radar, and I don't really have like a financial affiliation or anything with this, is there's one company called Wukio, Wukio. They have one called Apex. It's kind of like a baby modafinil without needing a prescription or going to an online pharmacy. That one gives you about 12 hours of really good, clean energy.
Damn. And is it a central nervous stimulant? Is it a caffeine?
Yeah, they designed it to almost like mimic the effects with the psychedelic part removed of like microdosing LSD and psilocybin at the same time.
Wow.
So that one's super interesting. They have another one called Bliss. That's basically... It's like the Stamets stack where you take a nitric oxide precursor, a little bit of psilocybin, and I think the last one in that one is niacin. But this one just kind of combines them all together in a capsule. And then they have one more, but those two, Apex and Bliss, work really well. The second one that not a lot of people know about are intranasal peptides. So a lot of people are familiar, of course, like GLP,
sure,
BPC 157, TB 500, whatever. But you can actually administer peptides intranasally, and it feels like you're spraying smart drugs into your brain.
Really?
The top three. And I have a pro tip for this if you want to spend a little extra money. The top three are CMAX, like SEMAX, C-LANK, SELANK, and SS31. All three of those you can find as intranasal peptides. They're legal to sell for human research online. And you just do a few huffs of any of those, and it's like lights on. And all three of them also have neural anti-inflammatory effects, meaning like especially jet lag, travel, sleep deprivation. They help out with that also. Some doctors like, you're in Austin, right? Primarily. Yeah. So if you talk to a guy, I think he has access to these, like Brigham Bueller at Way to Well.
Yeah, he's my buddy. Yeah, I know Brigham. Yeah.
If you can find a doctor that will sell you exosomes, you can actually open the bottle of exosomes and dump them into that nasal spray bottle, and that basically amplifies the effects on steroids. You're literally like intranasally snorting exosomes, and exosomes are just chock full of these growth factors that help to heal tissue. But that combo of an intranasal peptide plus exosomes is probably the most powerful, like, light bulb for the brain that I've ever found.
Wow. Damn. And I thought Adderall was good. By the way, I took Adderall.
I mean, like, if I had to choose and just go for something super simple, I would, and I didn't want Adderall, I would get modafinil instead.
Dude, I tried, somebody told me to take Adderall. Somebody gave me Vyvanse, and then they gave me Adderall. They tried 10 milligrams. I'm not a drug guy. And I was like on it, and I was like, dude, this is blow. I was like on the plane, rocking back and forth, texting people. I'm like, this is literally feels like good cocaine.
Yeah. Arguably the only way to skirt some of the side effects and almost like the excess stimulation you can get from that sometimes is it more rapidly depletes two things in your brain that you can replace: dopamine and choline. So if somebody came up to me right now and told me, hey, you got to take Adderall for the next week, I would take Mucuna dopa, which is like an over-the-counter herb that replenishes your dopamine levels that are just getting pooped out way more quickly when you're on Adderall. And then choline. choline you find naturally in like fish, eggs, walnut. That's why a lot of those things are known to be good for the brain.
Yeah.
You can also buy like or phosphatidylcholine or acetylcholine.
Is choline an
And,
amino acid?
I don't think it fits into the amino acid category. I think it would more fit into the fatty acid category. I don't remember for sure. Like it's like what's this on it alpha brain. Like one of their primary ingredients is high amounts of choline. For that reason, it's like some of these compounds speed up the rate at which you burn gas, and then you would consider choline to be kind of like the gas.
Well, what do you see in 10 years? Do you ever like extrapolate and think what most of us are going to be doing? We're pushing ourselves beyond our biology, but still, stem cells, I think they probably work, but the science feels it's still not quite definitive. You've got hides, which I think are going to be the new frontier in terms of building muscle, growing hair, all that stuff. It sounds like. But what is your, as a biohacker, what is your, how optimistic are you, and what are we looking at? I mean, are we looking at tissue regeneration? Are we looking at CRISPR-Cas9? And what are we doing? We're still in the dark ages?
I think we're looking at all of us just basically moving to Sardinia and, adopting a great grandma and hiking Nigerian dwarf goats up the side of a mountain.
There you go, dude. That's what I'm about.
Simple, baby.
Dude, I'd way rather do that shit.
Works. It does work. Like there's a provable model over there. Like that's one way to go.
Yeah, community.
And then you have like, whatever, the Bryan Johnson model, right? I think he's a great pioneer. He's brought a lot of energy and interest into the longevity space. But that's kind of like, every minute of every day is dialed in, and your last meal is at 11:30 a.m. or whatever ungodly hour he has dinner. And
it's so strange.
You're just like cold and hungry and libidoless, huddled inside a hyperbaric chamber and eating the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and doing the same workout every day. And more power to him. Like I would put that into the David Goggins category
very strange.
Of like,
it's an extreme
that's
way
inspirational, but maybe not relatable. And so I'm obviously biased because I'm me, but I like my approach. Do the natural thing as much as possible. Because if you look at the biohacking world, a lot of the technologies that we have, like red light beds, red light panels, infrared light saunas, like those are simulating sunlight and the temperature dysregulation and stress we would get from being outside on a hot, warm afternoon. If you look at PEMF mats, grounding, earthing, all these electrical modalities that are supposed to reduce inflammation, that's like the indoor technology variant of going outside barefoot, going for a walk on the beach, swimming in a salty body of water, just a natural body of water in general to get the grounding and earthing effect. If you look at, what would be another example, like hyperbaric oxygen, exercise with oxygen therapy, intermittent hypoxia machines, all these ways people are tweaking oxygen, in the biohacking realm. I mean, nasal breathing, doing some breath work, doing some yoga, going outside on a walk with some deep breathing, like doing that as much as possible, I think, so you don't become jaded and spend your entire life indoors and pale, is a good idea. But the way I view my life, and there's also another reason, I live out in Idaho, and we were talking before the show, I highly cherish and value family, legacy, setting up roots somewhere, my great grandkids living in the same area that I lived, and just this generational familial wealth, both relationally and financially, building up over years. But if you look at a place like Idaho, you can also combine like the best of what ancestral wisdom and modern science has to offer, right? So I can be outside, I can be doing breath work and sunlight and grounding and earthing, but then, you walk into my office and there's like $500,000 worth of every biohack known to humankind, right? Because this is what I get paid to do. I don't think everybody has to own all this stuff, but especially when I travel, like using things like red light therapy, hyperbaric therapy, getting an NAD IV, like most people who do some of this stuff, and I don't know how much you've experimented with this stuff, Bryan.
Not enough.
You do feel better. Like you can definitely get to the point where, similar to exercise, there's a law of diminishing returns, or you're like, again, cold and hungry and libidoless all day, just doing all the hacks. But I think, 10 years from now, we'll see people who have an understanding of and know how to use some of these cool technologies, but also based on a lot of, say, the Blue Zone data, have an appreciation of ancestral wisdom.
You may, it's a perfect mix, right? I love your approach. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at you versus Bryan Johnson, first of all, and I'd rather look like you. Bryan looks just way too pale and skinny for me, but maybe that's a genetic thing. But
I have a theory about that. And again, like I like Bryan. I talk with him. We're on friendly terms. I think he's doing a great thing for the industry. But I have a hypothesis that the better job you do at like human anti-aging and longevity, the more you begin to look like an elf.
Dude, what is that? He's got this. Remind me to tell you what Rogan said about red light. I'll tell you now. Then I want to get back to Bryan. Rogan said that he has been using red light therapy. He used glasses, to read, and I do too now. Finally, depending on what it is. But I've always had really good eyes. But he used red light therapy and this thing called macular support. It's some kind of a supplement, and he doesn't need glasses anymore. So do you have any idea how that happens and what that is? Or is that
and it's confusing for a lot of people, right? Because like if you ever buy a red light panel or red light, like they all come with glasses.
Yeah.
Or not glasses, like goggles that you're supposed to wear.
Yeah.
Goggles or sunglasses. So a lot of people are under the impression that light is like, it's going to be like a laser, like a Star Wars laser.
Yeah,
like
I was. Yeah, I did. I've only been in one red light bed once at Ways to Well. And slept great, but I didn't.
Yeah, and if you look at the mechanism of action, like why is red light actually a thing, anyways? Like why is it caught on in the health world and in the longevity world? Is it impacts the mitochondria? Specifically, if you think back to high school chemistry or whatever, you had like the electron transport chain. Little electrons travel through that chain. Eventually, they poop out the other side, and ATP gets thrown off as a byproduct of that. Well, there's technically like 4 different protein complexes that those electrons travel through as they're going through the electron transport chain in the mitochondria. And they all have different names. There's like complex 1, 2, 3, and 4. And one of them is called cytochrome C oxidase. That's the name of the actual protein complex. That can absorb light. And when that complex absorbs light, particularly in the infrared spectrum, it increases, like speeds up the motor, right? So it produces more ATP. So if you look at any tissue, including the eyes, including the retina, that contain mitochondria, if there's any type of mitochondrial dysfunction or deficit contributing to some kind of disease state, low energy, low ATP, poor vision, then if the dysregulated mitochondria is the reason for that, then red light may actually help. And what's interesting is you see this thing going around, the methylene blue. Have you seen this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So people have the blue mouths, and you don't have to have a blue mouth. Like you can get taken a capsule or a dropper in water. But methylene blue actually interacts with that cytochrome C oxidase to speed up the ATP production even more, which is why a lot of people use methylene blue like 60 to 90 minutes before they do red light or sunlight to amplify that even more. But back to the retinal thing, the mechanism of action would be if there was some type of mitochondrial deficiency, whether genetic or lifestyle age-based, that could be repaired by exposure to red light, then it could theoretically improve eyesight or reduce, say, macular degeneration.
I eat dates because the Bedouin can see forever, and they say that dates help. I don't know if I'm wrong. An Egyptian doctor said that.
I mean, if you dipped them in methylene blue and then laid in a red light bed with your testicles cinch on, might work.
That's what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm going to do. I just need to get a red light bed. What with Bryan Johnson, he's got that new supplement that he drinks in the morning. Have you looked at that?
I know nothing about it. This is news to me. What is it?
He's selling a supplement. He's selling a concoction. He's selling a cocktail.
It's not just olive oil, right?
No, it's a.
I don't know. Let's
it's
pull
kind
it
of
up.
like I don't know what it is.
Let's do this live.
Yeah, let's do it live and see what it is.
Okay. Bryan Johnson morning supplement. And this is a new thing. Longevity mix, that one, the blueprint
longevity mix. I want to see what's in that.
And knowing Bryan, it probably is not like one of those artificial sweeteners, food colorings. So usually
he's legit. I think he's sincere.
Okay, so calcium alpha ketoglutarate, CAAKG. That's interesting because there is kind of like fish oil, for example, is like, it's got so many years of research behind it. And as long as it's a good fish oil and it hasn't been heated or kept rancid, it's pretty good for your cells. Calcium AKG, I was at a longevity conference like 2 months ago, And a guy gave a presentation on it, and it actually has a pretty good emerging body of like mammalian evidence for longevity. So that one, I don't know how much they're using. You know, whenever you're looking at supplements, you look at, is this proprietary? And if so, is the dose being used equivocal to what you'd actually need based on what they use in human research?
Yeah, dosage is important.
So, but yeah, that's a good one. Creatine monohydrate, we already established. With creatine, the one thing to look for, and he doesn't list this on the label, and typically if they're actually paying for this, they will, because it's like a bragging point. Crea Pure from Germany usually is like the actual pure unadulterated form of creatine. So he's got creatine monohydrate in there. It might not be the best one, but it's good. Glycine as an amino acid, that one's great. And by the way, a couple of rabbit holes here. I'm gonna set this down for a second. You know how some people will use like an 8 sleep or a cooling mattress or like get the room cold because there's certain things that impair deep sleep. THC impairs deep sleep. Heavy meal before bed, high amounts of caffeine in your bloodstream when you sleep. Cooling increases deep sleep. But for a guy like you or me, when we travel, like we don't walk in every hotel room, man. It's got an 8 sleep mattress or whatever. But glycine at about 5 grams, the glycine's dirt cheap. Like you can get just like Now Foods glycine on Amazon or whatever. It cools the body.
Really?
And I use that when I travel, if I'm going to a hot place and and I want to sleep better at night. Glycine's a good one.
Because I wake up in the middle of the night. That's a problem.
To pee or just wake up?
Yeah, to pee, and also I just wake up sometimes.
Yeah, we can talk about that. There's some hacks for that. We'll come back to that. Theanine, glutathione, sodium hyaluronate, vitamin C, lysine, taurine, calcium, and magnesium. This is almost like a blend of things that would theoretically support mental function and aging and may also play a role in mitochondrial support. It's not bad. What's he selling it for? 46.55. He's making decent margins on it because not a lot of those things are like super expensive to get, especially if you're not using CreaPure. But like, there's no red flags. Like if you handed this to me, I'd take it in the morning. Like,
right.
Yeah. So
there are people like, I'm sorry to say this, but Gary Brecka, when that guy will say things where I'm like, no, cold plunge does not melt fat off your body. Like he said, like nitrogen, water. I just don't.
Is that what he said? Cold plunge will melt fat off your body?
Oh yeah. It was like cold water and stuff. I'm like, no.
I mean,
dude.
well, let me put it this way. And remind me, we'll talk about the sleep thing, like waking up at night. But the like you do see an appreciable increase in metabolic rate when you cold plunge. Back to my explanation of why high intensity cardio is going to potentially long term help with weight loss more than zone 2 cardio. It's because you get the post exercise metabolic rate increase. It's the issue though is you can't find any like long-term clinical studies showing that increase in metabolic rate is clinically meaningful from a weight loss standpoint. You could theorize that it would be, but then you take a couple of other human clinical studies that have shown that people tend to overeat after they do a cold plunge. So a lot of people talk about these studies.
Yeah, because they're cold.
Eat on average 200 to 400 extra calories. And like if you're self-aware and you're not a little bitch and you understand that and you're like, okay, I know I'm going to be hungry after this, but I'm not going to add like an extra handful of macadamia nuts and dark chocolate to my smoothie or whatever, then you can use that to your advantage, burn extra calories and not calorically hypercompensate after the cold plunge. But it's all still theory about whether or not it would actually melt fat off your body. Like drawing from just like perspective and experience, if you are restricting calories and you're doing some type of cold plunging and you're restricting calories and you have no like thermal dysregulation, you're probably going to burn fat a little faster than you would if you weren't doing cold plunges, but it's not like the magic ticket.
Right.
The other myth that goes around about cold plunges, you've probably seen this one, is that you're not supposed to do it after a workout. Right. That's like, have you heard this?
No, I've not heard it, but
all right. So everybody say like, don't cold plunge after a workout. It's going to shut down inflammation. It's going to shut down your body's ability to build muscle. Now people are saying do it before. First of all, yes, doing a cold plunge before a workout is like a total hack on motivation, on a huge dump of epinephrine and adrenaline. increase in your resistance to pain, ability to exercise at what's called a reduced rating of perceived exertion. Like, it is kind of a cheat if you've got the balls to go do like a quick 2-minute cold plunge before you hit the gym. But all of the research showing that cold plunging or cold exposure post-workout is going to somehow like impair your gains. The amount of time spent in the cold plunge was 10 to 20 minutes with the 1 degree Celsius or greater drop in muscle core temperature, meaning that you would have to be in there for a long time and be like shivering ass cold.
Hypothermic practically, yeah.
Where you're simulating what they did in research. Most people I know who are doing a cold plunge after workout, they're like, yeah, I took a quick cold shower so I'm not sweating at work. Or I jumped for like 2 minutes into the inflatable one at the gym and I'm done. Not a lot of people are doing like the 20-minute suffer fest, which you shouldn't do. Post-workout, you shouldn't do that. But one of the things that happens in exercise and nutrition, in all research, but in health research a lot, is like baby talk, right? It's like, all red meat good, all red meat bad. Well, no, where's it from? Is it processed? What's it served with?
It's very American. It's very American. Be either one or the other. There's no nuance, or be in the middle. Moderation's not very American.
Yeah, so many nuances. You know what I use for waking up at night, besides just like being careful how much water I drink, is there's two things I use. One is an app, and one is this thing you wear. There's this little wristband or ankle band. I wear it on my ankle. It's called an Apollo. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay, so it's got a built-in accelerometer that will detect nighttime movement. And then it will produce this vibratory sensation that lulls your body back into a sleep-like state without you needing to like pick up your phone or do anything or adjust it or push any buttons. And it's like you can barely feel it, but it's almost like kind of like a purring cat on your chest.
Yeah.
Kind of like the equivalent of that on your ankle.
I sleep with I always sleep with a purring cat on my chest. But keep going.
Yeah, exactly. Game changer. I get up at like 2 a.m. like clockwork to pee. You know, a lot of guys do.
Yeah.
Except for when I travel, because my wife would kill me if I did this at home. I sleep with a giant water bottle next to the bed when I travel. It's like the old keep your water bottle in your sleeping bag when you're camping trick.
Yep.
You'd be surprised at how much longer you stay awake when you get out of the hotel room bed searching for the bathroom and you don't know where it's at.
Oh, fuck.
Because it's an unfamiliar room and you flip on the light and it's bright and you get back into bed and your heart rate's all up. So
you mean you piss in the bottle?
I roll over, I shove my dick into this little water bottle next to the bed. Big water, I like a 32 ouncer so I can hit it multiple times if I need to.
Fuck yeah.
And then I just remember not to drink out of it in the morning. So anyways, the second thing is there's an app. Besides the Apollo, the second thing is there's an app. It's called NuCalm, N-U-Calm. And I mean, like the sleep apps and the sleep YouTube channels and tracks, they're a dime a dozen. But this is the one that, even though I don't go to sleep with headphones or earbuds in, if I wake up at like 2 or 3 a.m., I'll put that in. And it's the only app I've found that will lull me back to sleep super fast using sound.
Wow.
There's just like one track that I use.
What's it called?
It's called NuCalm, like N-U Calm.
NuCalm. All right.
And there's something about the way they described it to me, because I interviewed the guy on my podcast because I was just curious about like how this thing actually works. It kind of like confuses your brain because it's these super complex tracks laid on top of something very similar to binaural beats. And airplane, car, waking up at night to go, like that's my go-to app for actual sounds that for some reason just work.
That's awesome. I like that though. I like sounds.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
A lot of people with racing brains, it's like sleep hygiene, most people know about. Keep the room cold. Don't exercise or eat a heavy spicy meal before bed. That's part of the cold thing. Keep the room dark, which is also simple.
I need to get a colder room. I've been lucky to an extent. Like I think genetically, like I've always had really high testosterone. Like I'm 58. My test last time I checked that weighs too well was 785. And that was after I hadn't slept that much.
You probably have like prisoner genes or something. Like,
I got prisoner genes, bro.
Large history of like violent.
That's it.
Criminals in your family. Yeah,
always ready.
Criminals.
Always ready.
Yeah.
You know what's funny about that is my cholesterol when I was about, I was 23 or 25. And the doctor said, your cholesterol is very low. Are you physically very aggressive? And I was like, I don't know. I wrestled and I like to, I kickbox and I do all that stuff, And he's like, yeah, he had been part of some weird experiment or study where violent criminals typically have low cholesterol. I don't know if that's still true, but it's kind of interesting. It's a weird, I don't know if it checks out. He said that. So I've always held on to that and been like,
Yeah.
it makes me feel macho. It makes me feel tough and macho. I feel like I'm.
Yeah. I mean, like, what the mechanism would be if that were true is that testosterone, growth hormone, anabolism, muscularity in general would result in a higher turnover of cholesterol due to it being a precursor hormone as a building block for a lot of those. So you might
get rid of it more.
You might deplete your cholesterol more readily. That would probably be why that occur. You also have the one where like people who are left-handed tend to be more violent because apparently left-handed people are harder to fight than right-handed people. So from a genetic standpoint, left-handed people were bred into scenarios of like warrior fighter more than right-handed people and still carry that in their genes.
Yeah. Yeah, the only problem with that is apparently pedophiles are more left-handed. That's what I read about that. There are a lot of pedophiles that are left-handed. So look, it's a balance, man.
What if you're a pedophile with low cholesterol? What's that mean?
Now that's a very good question. Yeah. That's something we have to do an experiment.
Yeah. But what I was saying about the sleep thing is, most people understand they keep the room dark, keep the room cold, don't work in bed, but people with racing minds, and a lot of times those are like creatives, entrepreneurs, et cetera. You'd probably fit in that category. Quieting the sound in the brain can be achieved two ways. One, by cooling the frontal cortex. And there's some companies actually working on this, like actual like head cooling, like wraparounds that you wear while you're asleep. And I've tried a couple that like, they're not good for side sleepers right now. It feels like a bunch of wires attached to your head. But then the second, and this is easy to doable, is sound. Sound keeps your mind from thinking about other things.
And sound won't prevent you from deep sleep?
No. I mean, you could blast it, but no.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because my baby, I got a 1.5-year-old and the sound machine's on, so.
Yeah.
And a dark room, obviously, right? You want a dark room.
I mean, so, this home that I just built out in Idaho, we pulled out all the stops, dude. Like the most advanced HEPA air filters, air scrubbers, MERV filters. Like we did the air, we did the electricity. There's no Wi-Fi. Like everything is hardwired. Like there's Ethernet cables in every room of the house and Ethernet ports.
Because you don't want any of that electromagnetic.
You hardwire everything. Every floor of the house is grounded. Like there's actual copper cabling under the floor. So when you're on the third floor, it's the same as being outside barefoot in the dirt. And then the water, it's a 14-stage reverse osmosis whole house water filter system with remineralization, and it puts 40 ppm oxygen into the water. Just being in the sector that I'm in, I find out about all these cool aspects of this field known as building biology. And my project was to just build them all into this house. But then the lighting, back to your question about the darkness, what we did with that was we went all LED flicker-free lighting, and then the light bulbs next to the bed are just red, right? So when we flip on the light bulbs at night, and when I travel, I just use like a red light headlamp that I travel with. There's none of the melatonin disrupting blue light. And so
by the way, blue light really is a thing. On my phone, when I'm looking at it at night, that's gonna interrupt my sleep.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can put it in night mode. What I did, what do you have, an iPhone?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you Google iPhone red light trick, you'll come up. It takes 2 seconds, but in accessibility settings, so that's my phone in daytime. And if I triple click the action button on the right side, 2, 3.
If you triple click what?
You see it flip into red. So I triple click the action button, and you just go into accessibility settings and you set your color filter up. But just Google iPhone red light trick. So yeah, it produces blue light. I think some of this stuff is blown out of proportion. Like, I don't want to be alarmist. And there's actually a new documentary on YouTube about how blue light blocking glasses are a scam. I don't believe that. But it's one of those things that fits into the category of like every little thing makes a difference. So if you can have the phone in night mode, if you can wear blue light blocking glasses, if you can have like a red light bulb next to your bed, blackout curtains and a sleep mask, I mean, that stuff helps. But I'm super adamant about it. Like when I go to a hotel room, I get the curtain hanger out of the closet or the coat hanger out of the closet, and I use it to keep the curtains more closed so the light doesn't leak through in the morning.
Right.
So I'm super picky about light, and I think it does make a difference.
I'm sure it does. I mean, part of this is also like you've worked very hard to carve out the kind of life that you saw for yourself. And I think part of health, part of living well is being very deliberate and specific about what you, first of all, you have to isolate what you want, and then you have to take daily action to do it. And it just takes discipline. You're the kind of guy that's very disciplined naturally. So, part of it is just, and then if you want to be successful, you got to make sure you're not bullshitting yourself or other people, because you want longevity in your business, you want longevity with your family and all that stuff. So if you're not a total sociopath, I think it's almost impossible to avoid being honest all the way through. So then you don't have shit hanging on your head, and stuff like that. And that to me is also
you're always going to have times in your career when you're jaded, when you're biased, when you call the shots wrong. I've had this happen many times. You promote something or say something or endorse something, and then later find out that the research behind it is false, or that even simple things like eating 6 small meals a day, which I used to tell all my personal training clients, doesn't actually result in more weight loss than eating 2 meals a day. But I think what's most important is and this is something I hold myself to, is admit when you're wrong. Like, always be willing to swallow the humble pill and say,
it's so important.
I was wrong about that. And sometimes that is financially harmful to yourself to do so.
Yeah, but when you're a scientist, if you want longevity, I talk to Lane Norton about this all the time. It's like, at the end of the day, you have to always have some doubt. The scientific method is, upon further research, if there is evidence that suggests that this is the wrong way to go, I adjust my approach. And there's nothing wrong with that. Actually, I think that's the way you build trust and financial stability long term. Like, if Ben Greenfield goes, "Hey guys, I was wrong about this. I was actually wrong. I looked at this research. I'm in. Now I can trust this dude."
Yeah. I mean, most recent example of that, like, for better or worse, I don't know what you think about this, but I used to be, like, up till 8 months ago, like, super on the anti-GLP-1 bandwagon. Like, they're just like the devil's playground. You're going to lose a bunch of muscle, and you're going to get a Ozempic face, and they're going to cause gastric distress and inflammation of various organs. I've kind of changed my stance on them, because most of those problematic side effects you see at standard doses. And if you look at like a really small dose, like, for example, I inject retatrutide right now 3 times a week. And it's not because I'm like morbidly obese or have diabetes or want to lose weight or manage blood sugar control. It's for 2 reasons. A, there is more and more research coming out on GLP-1s and what are called the pleiotropic effects. Pleiotropic means like system-wide effects, like on neural inflammation and on cholesterol health and triglyceride management and a host of factors related to having a healthy metabolism. Again, at very small doses. The other thing is, it kind of quiets food noise a little bit. Like right now, okay, so my time is 140, Brian. Before I started microdosing about 8 weeks ago with retatrutide, I would have been thinking about lunch, and I would have been thinking about lunch pretty seriously right now. I would have been like, gosh, like I'm pretty ready to like go punish last night's steak and make a salad, get some olive oil and do the chips. And now it's like I have to force myself to stop and eat lunch. So there's a little bit of a productivity hack in there, but on a standard dose, because I wanted to see what people who were saying the standard dose was so bad were actually feeling like. I did a standard dose of both tirzepatide and retatrutide. And people tell you, hey, if you're on these, you won't lose muscle if you just get your ass into the gym and eat adequate protein. But you can sit down in front of like the most beautiful ribeye steak, like your $48 Sun Life superfood protein smoothie, whatever, and you feel like throwing up. Like you don't want to touch it.
Right.
And then just imagine you're going to the gym then, and you have no energy at the gym to actually lift weights. So all you want to do at the gym is just like walk and do some crunches. So it's one thing to say have the protein and exercise, and another thing to be on a standard dose and to make a half-assed attempt at actually doing it. But the microdose, like the baby dose, I'm pretty impressed. Like even just like the blood, I wear this blood
Look, I
sugar.
mean, there's no doubt it helps people who are very fat stop eating, and calorie restriction is better for you for a lot of people. There are a lot
And
of
it may
food
even
addicts.
improve or maintain metabolically health and people who aren't overweight or obese, which is kind of why I'm doing it.
I mean, you see so many of these people. I mean, metabolic disease and the way Americans eat. I travel this country is actually borderline insanity. Like the way they've been hijacked by big food, whatever you want to call it, just it's borderline insanity. And if GLP-1 and these kinds of peptides can help people not taking as many calories, I think
Yeah.
ultimately
And look, the baby dose, because some people will be like, well, no, you got to be on this for life. You know, learn self-control. The baby dose, I would even consider that to be like training wheels. Like it just quiets food noise enough. Because I've even stopped taking it for 2 of the 8 weeks that I've been on it. You don't go back into like hedonistic, like Epicurean eating greasy chicken wings in bed mode.
right.
Like it's almost like you remember a little bit. Oh yeah, I guess, I didn't have to have lunch the past 4 weeks and I didn't die. I felt fine. Like it's almost like training wheels to learn how to eat or at least control your eating habits a little better.
Changing your approach, saying you're wrong, I think has so much currency. I will say, Saladino, is it David Saladino? I don't know his name. Paul Saladino. I don't know.
You mean the carnivore guy?
Yeah, I don't know him, and
Yeah.
I think he says a lot of things that I hear are debunked all the time on Instagram. I don't know, but I will say that with his raw milk shit, he wants the whole world to drink raw. Good luck with getting the world. Good luck with listeria and everything else. Yeah, okay,
make sure you choose the right farm on that. I mean, I think he has good intentions. I did kind of laugh. I did kind of laugh when all of a sudden carnivore became carnivore, but. It's like that.
But what he did, what I appreciated about him and what I respected about Saladino was he wrote a book and then he realized that carnivore was not the way to go. He realized that eating fruit and eating some honey and things, that made him feel better. And it took a lot of guts. And I give him so much credit for saying, hey, I wrote this book. And that's a lot. Writing a book, you're an author.
I've heard him say before. Like I heard him say recently, I used to be carnivore. Yeah, and kudos to him.
Yeah, that's a very ethical thing to do. I really appreciate it.
There was a crossover period where he was like eating honey and avocados and berries, and these were like part of the carnivore diet. I'm glad he transitioned to just say, no, there are deficiencies on the carnivore diet. And I don't know how you eat, Brian, but like.
Not carnivore.
I could totally get. I consider like the modified carnivore diet like paleo, and I love a paleo-esque approach, like berries, sweet potatoes, yams, so-called underground storage organs. Fish, beef, meat, not a ton and barely any grains, not a whole lot of dairy, and it's simple. And my gut feels great on that.
Yeah, I'll do like a whole fat yogurt from a local farm here in Austin. Maybe I'll put some blueberries in there. Sometimes I even mix like whey protein isolate in there if it's really clean just to get that extra thing. I take creatine in the morning, and then I'll typically have it'll be like berries, maybe some salad, and then just protein like bison or just Rogan gave me a bunch of elk recently. Anything like that I can eat. If I can eat game meat or good meat, chicken, and then once in a while I'll have like pizza or something. But I'm not a big grain eater.
Yeah, I bow hunt, and I'm on the fence about like the meat that I hunt. I am more concerned about it than I am about the meat that I buy. It's kind of like seafood. A lot of people think, only eat wild caught. Well, technically, if you get farm fish from a good farm, like we get a monthly box from a company called Seatopia, where they control the fish food and everything is completely clean. I'd rather have that than wild caught fish because I don't know what it's been out eating. And then
I'm going to write that down.
Like,
Seatopia. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, Seatopia. They're good, like SEA. But then, with deer, because I just shot a whitetail a couple of weeks ago.
Love that.
I don't know how many of the local farms, alfalfa and clover that it was feeding on were sprayed, right? And it's generally healthier than most of the meat I could buy from the average Rosard. But yeah, exactly. Like, I'll shoot turkey, I'll go out turkey hunting later on this week before Thanksgiving. And, last turkey I shot when I field dressed it was just a bunch of corn came pouring out of it. And I'm like, I have no clue where this turkey got this corn, just like feeding on it on some random farm somewhere, what it's been sprayed with. So I love to hunt, but unless it literally is like elk at 13,000 feet or something like that, like, you can't fool yourself into thinking that hunted wild game meat is necessarily super.
Yeah, I shot a bunch of deer in Wisconsin for meat eater, and that was some of the best meat I've ever had because it was all corn-fed deer. Huge, huge deer.
It's like the grain-fed cows.
Oh, they were fucking delicious.
It's like in America now, you go to farm to table, they brag about the grass-fed, grass-finished beef. It's kind of funny. I was in Dubai, and like they brag on the window, this is a grain-fed beef because they know it. It tastes better.
Yeah. Well, you know what the best meat I've had? I've eaten everything from, elk, whitetail, whatever it is. Steve Ranella trapped some beaver and cooked beaver the way you cook stew. I got to tell you, man, it was so tender. It was so good. I'm not saying it's better than elk, but it was astonishingly good. Astonishingly.
I've never had beaver.
Oh, dude, it's so good. The way he cooked it was ridiculous.
A slow cook, crock pot, sous vide, or smoking for any wild game like that usually does the trick. The best, if you're a meat guy, the best meat and the coolest meat story I've discovered this year was some guy messaged me on Instagram. He had a farm an hour from the house I used to live at in Spokane. And he said, I've got some of the only 100% pure Piedmontese cows in the country. You should come check out my farm sometime.
Wow.
And I'd heard about Piedmontese beef before and didn't know at the time.
I've had it in Piemonte. I've had it in Piemonte.
Most of the time, unless you've had it in Piedmonte. It's like 50 Angus, 50 Piedmontese. But apparently what happened was these cattle originated in the Middle East. And I don't know if you've seen them before. They have the follistatin knockout gene, meaning they have like uninhibited muscle growth. So they're massive, massive animals. If you were to Google like the myostatin knockout mice and you see like those huge mice or little German boys, it's kind of like that. So apparently somebody in Canada bought a steer and 3 cows. And then this horse farmer in Washington State wound up buying them, bringing them across the border and starting this pure Piedmontese farm. But because they originated in the Middle East, they developed sweat glands. Like from a biological evolutionary standpoint, they developed the ability to be able to regulate temperature in stressful temperature conditions, which I've learned all this recently. This is unheard of in cattle. So because of that, you know how you hear like an animal shouldn't know that you're hunting or that's being shot because then it gets the big cortisol release and that causes a calcium rigor mortis like influx into the muscle and you get tougher muscle. Well, temperature dysregulation is another source of cortisol release. So that also allows the meat to be super tender because they're less stressed. And because of that follistatin knockout gene, the fiber of the protein is 1/16 the diameter of like an Angus cow. Damn. So what that means is you would pull a medium rare at like 95 degrees. And the first few times I got this, because we wound up getting a whole cow, first few times I overcooked the meat because I just didn't believe the guy. And so it barely takes any cooking. The other thing is that because the fiber diameter is so thin, every cut of the cow is tender, meaning like the rump, the sirloin, the ribeye, the chuck roast, it's all the same tenderness as like the filet mignon. It's crazy.
Wow.
And it's called Monzo is the name of the Piedmontese
when are
beef
they
company.
gonna? You're caught up in this. When are they gonna have myostatin inhibitors that I can take that are gonna have no other effects but just build me up? And
they have it. It's legal. You can go to like Mexico, Cabo, Lithuania, Dubai. It's not myostatin. It's actually the same one that Piedmontese cow has. It's follistatin.
Wow.
I've done it.
Have you?
So I weigh 196 right now. So I'm 6'2" and single digit body fat percentage and 196. A year and a half ago, I was at 180. When I finished Ironman triathlon, I was at 169. A year and a half ago, I was at 180, and I went to Mexico and I got the follistatin gene. Like nurse walks into the room, she has a syringe, and she literally says, "Are you ready to be superhuman?" I'm like, okay. And she did an intramuscular injection of follistatin.
I know somebody who did this. And now that I'm realizing it, it
is reversible. You can take an antibiotic and it reverses it.
Really?
And that's how they would get rid of it if there were deleterious effects. I went from 180 to 192 over 12 weeks, and I didn't change like protein intake, my exercise protocol, and then it tapered off. And they said the effects wear off after about a year and a half or two, and to keep it going, you just like re-inject. But they actually do have a follistatin gene therapy.
And how do you feel?
I feel good. I mean, the only thing I noticed was more muscle gain, and I love the way I feel at 196 instead of 180 or 175.
Yeah, no
Just get
shit.
stronger and don't get cold as easily.
Yeah.
There's other gene therapies they're working on. Clotho for the brain. They're working on one for testosterone that basically allows you to make testosterone without getting on testosterone replacement therapy. But these are highly experimental, and these are your genes, right? So the main company that leads most of the research on this is called Mini Circle. And they've got like the patented technology to be able to do this via an intramuscular injection.
So the intramuscular injection you took, what is it? That's kind of, did you feel like that was a gamble? Because it could be dangerous, right? Or no, there's been enough research?
Well, your body naturally contains follistatin. So you're upregulating something your body already makes itself, but at a higher rate. And it's reversible. The long-term research on it, and this is something I run into sometimes. Like I've done like the full body blood filtration in Mexico and the full body head to toe stem cell thing. And I did the plasma replacement therapy in Texas where they literally, this was the one you saw in Brian Johnson's documentary where they pull out your plasma. And then I sat for 2 days in a medical clinic bed and had 10 1-liter bags of young 18-year-old male human donor plasma like dripped back into me. Many of these things, if I look at them, like I'm not going to fool myself into thinking there's like 20 years of really good research on like 43-year-old biohacking dads laying in a hospital bed in Austin getting 18-year-old male plasma infused into their bodies. But I do look at, as objectively as I can, the filtration protocols, the screening protocols, the cleanliness of what's going into my body, the theorized mechanism of action, what could go wrong, and if something could go wrong, is it reversible? So I don't Mickey Mouse too. Like I still consider myself to be, to live in this home I got to live in for another 40, 50, 60, 70 years. And I don't want to irresponsibly just like, grow a fourth testicle and pass away in my sleep while my kids are still 17 years old. So like
Exactly.
I'm pretty careful with what I do, but there are some things that are not like fully without risk.
Right. Testosterone. Talk to me about testosterone replacement, human growth hormone, steroids in general. Your thoughts?
TRT, I do think because of the natural levels that decline with age, and the fact that that is accelerated by the fact that men now work less in manual labor type of jobs that would theoretically increase testosterone than we used to do. Like they've even shown that chopping wood increases your testosterone, but not a lot of us are painting, chopping wood, doing construction work, building fences. So we have a somewhat sedentary, comfortable existence that would downregulate testosterone.
Less of a threat too. I feel like there's less of a physical threat to men in a lot of ways.
We don't need to fight as much. Yeah. And in most scenarios. So, there's that also. And then if you look at the thing highest up on the totem pole to fix that, it would be testosterone replacement therapy. The problem is a lot of guys will use that as a Band-Aid. Like there are so many things. Main building blocks for testosterone: vitamin D, minerals like magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids like fish and fish oil, creatine, zinc, and boron, right? Super simple things that you can find in many supplements and foods. You cover your bases with that. Second thing, lifting heavy weights, especially with your legs, because your legs are where the highest concentration of androgen receptors are, right? Squats, deadlifts, that's not just gym lore that those increase testosterone. They actually do. So lifting heavy weights, good amounts of sleep, low amounts of stress, good amounts of sunshine, healthy relationships. Like I tell guys, get all those pieces in place and test your testosterone again. If you already tested it, and if it's still low and you're over 40 years old and you're done having kids, because once you get on it, unless you get on some crazy enclomiphene, HCG, gonadorelin cycle, it's unlikely you're going to maintain fertility.
I also have a theory on testosterone. After you take it for a while, and I've seen this with a lot of guys, and I've had them quietly admit it to me, a lot of guys that take testosterone, if you check in with them about a year later, their libido actually dies. It goes down.
This is a myth. There's not a significant link between testosterone and libido.
Really?
There isn't. Libido is Libido's is relationship factors and neurotransmitter factors like dopamine and serotonin. It's not that regular or that. So there are indirect effects, right? Like if testosterone if testosterone helps me like lift weights, be more virile, have more energy, yeah, there's going to be indirect effects on libido, but testosterone does not increase your desire for sex.
Yeah, Rogan said the funniest thing in the world to me. He goes, I said, I think my testosterone's really high, man, because I just want to have sex all the time. And he goes, that's not from your testosterone. You're just a fucking pervert. And I was like, all right, well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a lot of this is mental.
Yeah.
So
I hope you're not left-handed. So then the other thing is the delivery mechanism. Like, let's say you're going to get on it. Like, still like 90% of doctors, that's just a guesstimate on my part, are going to give you a once or twice weekly injection. A big bolus of testosterone administered all at once in no way mimics the natural diurnal variation that men would see in their testosterone levels that occurs from their own natural production. So the problem with that is you can see a bigger increase in DHT, which would risk baldness and aggression. You'd see a bigger increase in estrogen, which would risk like gynecomastia and man boobs. And you're not mimicking a more natural approach. I think if you were to get on testosterone, there are some newer oral blends that I can't speak to from personal experience that are supposed to be one good alternative for that. But I think the easiest thing, as long as you're willing to like rub it in well and wash your hands well afterwards, is just a small amount of cream applied scrotally in the morning and the evening. Like, super simple, very similar to what your body would make naturally. And it's way better than the injections. You don't have to turn yourself into a human porcupine. So, kind of a nuanced subject, but that's the way I would do it if you were going to do it, is cover the bases first and then use the right replenishment approach. As far as HGH, dude, like, a lot of guys will turn to nandrolone, and you will gain massive amounts of muscle on it. Growth hormone, if you look at like nandrolone, it is incredible for putting on size. Like, anybody who's been on is like, dude, like, all of a sudden I got traps and I got a neck and I got like, the cannonball shoulders I've been looking for. The aggression and the affects on sleep parameters and the stress, particularly on the kidneys from that, would put it into the category, especially in an era of peptides that can upregulate your body's own natural growth hormone production, as something I wouldn't do unless it's a short-term stint to heal from an injury or surgery.
Because you can get the same effects from a peptide. Do you believe it? Do you think peptides?
Not the same, but you can get a pretty significant effect. So without the side effects, like an example of that would be stack. So most growth hormones, because your body does best with anabolic, catabolic cycles, and a constant state of anabolism could be like roughly correlated to increased rates of carcinogenicity, just because cell cancer growth is a pro-growth state. You don't want to be in a pro-growth state all the time. But an example of this would be like a couple of times a year for like 12 weeks, so 24 weeks out of the year, with a good 12-week break in between, you would do something like the peptide tesamorelin in the morning and ipamorelin in the evening. And those act on two different pathways, one to increase growth hormone receptor sensitivity and one to increase your own production. And you actually don't even take it every day. Like 5 day on, 2 day off, 2 12-week cycles with a 12-week rest period between each of those two alone, like not 100% without risks. We are still talking about non-FDA approved, sold for human research only peptides, but far fewer side effects because they're kind of just supporting your body's own natural production and sensitivity.
Right. And that's it. That's what you would take. You wouldn't, that's
what I've done for the past 2 years.
Okay. Yeah. And that builds muscle.
Yeah. And those are just injectable peptides.
Right.
I would say yes. Yes on the muscle building, although it's not going to happen unless you have adequate protein and calories.
Yeah.
However, on the recovery piece, and you're lifting. On the recovery piece, pretty good game changer. Like, that's why if I ever got knee surgery or had some serious accident, I would get on like an andro, like an actual growth hormone cycle.
Yeah.
Because it's so good at repairing the body. So you see really good recovery doing something like that.
Man, it's amazing how much you know. You've obviously, I know. Where can they find your products? Like, where do they go?
My book is kind of like the Bible of all this stuff. It's called Boundless.
Boundless.
But you could, like, if you just Google my name, you'll find most of my
I want
stuff.
to read that book because like you're really somebody that spent not only so much time looking into this stuff, but also changing your mind and also using your own body as an experiment. And that's kind of the calling card there, man. That's why. What's next for you? What's next for you? What are you doing? What are you excited about? What are you looking to do? You've kind of at 44, you've kind of arrived. You got money. You got a great family. You're living out in the middle of nowhere.
You know, I published this book like 6 months ago, and right now I'm noodling about. So I went from like writing long form, like 4,000 to 6,000 word posts. I love to write like 3 times a week until like 2016. Then I started to write once a week, still pretty good posts until about 2021. And then just the advent of social media and short form and everything, I kind of put a lot of that on pause. But one of the primary ways that I write books is by writing syndicated content on my website. And so what's next for me is I want to start writing again. And I'm pretty sure the topic of the next bout of writing and book is going to be kind of similar to some of the stuff we've talked about, like myths in the health industry and how to come at things with the right approach when it comes to getting healthy and just kind of dispelling a lot of stuff that's out there about whatever, cold plunges and peptide and testosterone, you know, any of the type of things we talked about today. So I'm going to start writing again pretty soon.
When are you in Austin next? We got to hang out probably in New York.
So that place that I did the plasma replacement therapy, when I was down there, they injected my penis with Botox, which was incredible. My wife asked me why I was getting like a paralytic agent injected into my dick. But what it is, it relaxes smooth muscle tissue and you get this huge rush of blood, which is great. So they do like all this sexual rejuvenation stuff. And then they did some facial exosomes. And so they
wait a minute, they shot Botox into your dick.
And they did shockwave therapy afterwards. To
I thought you were joking. Why did you shoot
this for real?
Why did you shoot Botox into your dick?
With a needle. And the effects were incredible.
Really?
And so apparently they do, like, one of their specialties is like vaginal rejuvenation. Like they do like they call it the wing lift and like aesthetic treatments for that. So I'm bringing my wife on like a little like sexual longevity biohacking tour of Austin at the end of December, and we're gonna build her a great vagina and eat some good food and then come home. So maybe I'll see you then.
There it is, baby, and you might get another shot of Botox in your dick.
If she's getting the wing lift, I got to get whatever they call that.
What did that do for you?
It just gives you better erections.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm doing pretty well in that department. Not to brag, but maybe because I'm so attracted to my wife.
Yeah, maybe that's why you're waking up at night.
That might be exactly what it is.
Yeah, if you attach that little wristband vibrating thing to the base of the dick and just cinch it up really, really tight,
yes,
it might kill 2 birds with one stone. And
that
solve those
little
issues.
piece of advice has made this podcast.
That's right.
Very worth it.
All right. Cool, man.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no problem.